You're listening to the Absolutely Cosmic Podcast.
I don't mean to interview you, but can you tell me a little bit more about your leadership stuff? That sounds amazing.
Yeah, of course.
And one more thing. I apologize. I apologize. I didn't say this earlier. Josh, on your podcast, you don't have to call me Mr. Lecara. You can call me Ray. I apologize. You can even call me Ray if you want all the other times. I know those that there's a coach who was a teacher when I was in high school. I call him Coach. I can't call him John. It's either got to be Mr. Schiffner or John. Or Coach. I can't call him John. So I know where that comes from, but I just wanted to say that, I don't know if that messes up your podcast, but you can call me Ray. You don't have to call me Mr. L. And then I'll just share this with you. I've gotten to the point now where when I would work with my families, for the students, I would put Mr. L, and then for the parents, I would put Ray. Well, I've just gotten to the point now where also most of my parents are much younger than I am anyway. But I just go with Mr. L all the time, or Mr. Lecara all the time. And then when I meet up with the parents, if we do a Zoom call, the parents and I'll say, oh, by the way, you can call me Ray. I just put Mr. L on everything. It just makes it easier. So I just wanted to give you a little context. I go by that now just all the time just because it's easier. But in terms of knowing you for all these years, you are a grown man now. And you may call me whatever you're comfortable with, but I apologize I didn't say that earlier before the podcast.
I appreciate that. I don't know. I've always grown up with the respect because you were a teacher early on and you've been a mentor of mine. So it's kind of like a level of respect, I feel. But
you're very kind. But just whatever you feel comfortable with, please know I'm not going to be offended either way.
I appreciate.
Sure. So now you got to tell me about the leadership stuff.
So that was it was really cool because most people in the Air National Guard, especially nowadays, do it online. So this past year, they let us know that they wanted to start sending in person because that's how it used to be. You'd go to an in-person course, You'd march around, you'd do PT, you would learn about basic leadership fundamentals from the enlisted side and what the Air Force expects of you. So it's really cool, and it was really cool because my initial flight training was down at Little Rock. That's where this course took place. So it was really cool to go back now that I had a deployment under my belt, some experience on the plane. I was comfortable doing my job a little bit, to go back to where I kind of started and then get to experience, leadership. But it was really interesting to see how active duty differentiates themselves from, I guess, the Air National Guard or the Guard side. And we learned things like how to deal with conflict management. If you have, let's say you have a staff sergeant below you or alongside you who may be a little discriminatory, and it's not just like race or gender type stuff, but it's like, we talked about like our, one of our instructors, I believe he was from Louisiana, if I'm not mistaken. And he said there were certain customs that he was used to that, someone from California or someone from Connecticut may not be used to, or the way we talk and the way we express ourselves. So it was just talking about how, like, if somebody, like, say a staff sergeant comes to you and is like, hey, this person's really lazy, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know how to motivate them to work. That was a big part of it, is just working with the staff sergeant and making sure that they're not being biased, they're not being truly discriminatory against someone for being a woman or being of color. Because I guess that still does happen in some ways in service. But also, like, being able to work with that airman or work with that person and kind of like that workplace, understanding where they come from and who they are. That was a big portion in the beginning, is understanding who you lead, and how to best work with them. And we learned a little bit about, I guess, military dynamics. There's an 80% rule, right? The 80% are like the 9 to 5. They do what is expected of them, but they're not gonna go above and beyond and be a superstar necessarily. They may in some aspects, but you have the bottom 10% of people, for whatever reason, they may just be lagging behind a little bit, and you have to work with them extra. They may be kind of that problem child, lack of better terms. And then you have the top 10%, which are the superstars. They go above and beyond, the work extra. They want to take every opportunity to grow and become better. And just, he explained how having the bottom 10 and the top 10 are very important to motivate that middle 80 in a group dynamic.
Wow.
And he said since COVID, it's shifted where it's like there's only 5% at the top, or he's noticed there's 5% at the top, still kind of that 80 in the middle, but there's more 15 at the bottom because people have been able to get away with a little more since COVID.
Yeah.
And he just talked about how you want to be in that top 10%, but you need that top 10% to motivate, and you need the bottom 10% to motivate people from being on both ends of that spectrum, I guess. And it was kind of eye-opening. We did a lot of public speaking, which was really fun. Some projects on like military mentors, personal experiences, our career field and how we affect the Air Force as a whole. And then working as a group, as a team. We had a PT program. So if you did so many miles, you ran so many miles, you got a certain amount of points. So at the end, we were going up against brother flight or sister flight, essentially. And whoever had the most points in each section got awards and stuff. And it was a good experience. It was fun. And one of my close friends, he's also a loadmaster out in Little Rock, active duty. But I'm super glad. I text him every week, call him every few weeks, and he's been actually on the podcast when I first started. Him and his buddy who streams on Twitch video games. We came on and we just talked about everything: video games, life philosophy, what it's like, where they came from. And it was a good experience to get outside just the bubble of who I work with normally and what I do normally, and kind of get more of an in-person experience on how the Air Force wants me to lead and fill those shoes when the time comes.
Do you anticipate going back in full time anytime soon?
Right now we're in a weird position because we just got announced to get the new model plane, which is really good. It's kind of bittersweet because there'll be 2 career fields that are kind of done away with this new model of plane, so they won't have a position on the plane. So they'll assimilate probably to either becoming a loadmaster or going to become a pilot. So that's going to kind of differentiate some more people, less time to be able to actually go in and fly. But on the flip side, once it does come down the pipe of going back to training and stuff like that, it should give us another year of active training. And then we should be up for deployment in a year or 2 after that, hopefully. So we were supposed to go in another year or 2 for deployment again, but we got taken off that unless World War III breaks out. So until...
These are crazy times.
Yeah. So until maybe 2030, we may not see another deployment or any full-time status unless something pops up, Hurricane assistance always pops up and is kind of like a deployment. You get put on orders. It'll probably be part-time up until 2030 unless something random kind of comes up that I'll be called in, which is good because then I could focus on building my entrepreneurial endeavors, my civilian side, get school hopefully done, and build the business and have time to focus on that in that aspect. So that'll be a good opportunity, but it is kind of disappointing though that I won't be able to get to deploy again unless again. And if World War III does pop off, it wouldn't be from what we've been told with the intel briefs and the technology peers like China and Russia have. It's scary. It's honestly like it's a lose-lose scenario. It feels like almost.
Oh yeah. And we may already be in the throes of it because it's just everybody's. If you study what led to World War I, what led to World War II, it's these little almost disconnected things that people are like, oh, that was But if you really kind of use that as the model, we've already we're closest now than we've ever been.
Yeah, 100%. And there was a point where all I'll say is that we were standing up ready for what I guess mission we would fill if something were to happen in certain parts of the world. We were like, okay, there's a potential. So there was, and then it's kind of calmed down since then, but we're still kind of on our toes with everything going on. And then you have the Middle East. It's like it seems like they can never catch a break and just be at peace. It's like they're constantly in turmoil. So there's that whole aspect that we might be thrust into at some point. But
so that that's another reason why I'm very proud of you for what what you've decided to do, because time is short. It was kind of difficult to step away from school in 2017 and head west, and we did that for a number of reasons. Much of it, though, was I knew at one point my wife wanted to be closer to her family. Family's getting older, that type of thing. But you're kind of going into unknown territory. Part of it, though, also given the extreme, I guess. So I really kind of figured if we ever moved, I was like, all right, well, I'll probably just teach somewhere else. But what you find out is that, for example, we were told our Connecticut certification was you could use it anywhere. No, you can't. The West Coast has a specific certification that will allow you for a couple of different states. There is a nationwide certification you can get, but your Connecticut certification, it may not be reciprocal depending on the state. And if anything, it'll be more on the eastern side than the western side. So there was a little, okay, that's interesting. But then once we moved, it was an opportunity to really kind of pursue a different avenue. Let's see what else is out there. And while I was in the East Coast, I was trying to do different things in addition to the teaching. Well, here's the kicker. So many people promise you everything, but they don't deliver. Or it's, help me, I'll help you. You help them, but they don't help you. And nice people and stuff. And I think sometimes people aren't even aware of what they're doing. But it was just, those were the things that were happening. And I had to spend most of my time, though, focused on what I was doing during the school years. I really only had, the summer to kind of explore and do different things. But the point of saying all that is life is short. And, when we moved onto the West Coast, if let's say none of this stuff worked out, I've met so many incredible people. One person was like a millionaire who had started a business, and also done really well, but then the economy tanked and he lost everything. And, but his mentality was, I can do it all over again. So it wasn't like I'm a loser now and I can't stand, I'm in a smaller place. He was like, it's okay. I can turn around and do it again. His whole thing was really about doing what was passionate to him. And when he passed at 80. I was at his funeral, and the coolest part was all these people who had been part of different businesses that he had done, as well as his family, all showed up at his funeral. It was the most beautiful thing, because sometimes you wonder, especially if you've talked to people who have hyperbolized or who have fed you a line later on, you go, is that even really? It was really neat to see that what he was saying had been accurate. And the different people he touched or the different people he helped. He had done stuff overseas. He was also in the military at one point as well. I mean, it was just really amazing stuff. So anyway, the whole point, though, is that you already have access to stuff. You see how the world is. You've gone outside of the state, outside the country. And this is the time. Right now, and hopefully nothing ever happens, but it's all about keeping Maddie close and having great experiences, keeping a Titus, right? Yeah. And sorry, my throat was dry. But also having those chances to get out with him. When I see my students, the first thing I always ask, because a lot of the times I see them weekly, and I'll say, so what was the highlight of your week? pick out something that was positive. It can be you went for a walk, you read something, you tried something, whatever it is. And I'll share with them, the most mundane things for me are my highlights. Walking with the dog is a highlight. Yesterday, for example, we're 10 minutes from the water. There's a lighthouse area we love to go to quite a bit. It was beautiful yesterday. Sunny skies. And that's the great thing, because if I only have an hour, it's great to drive down there and drive back, and I'm back to work. But I went with the dog. We sat on the grass. The dog sat right in my lap. We just looked at the water. We're looking at the sky, watching the people down there. That's right now. I would say that's the highlight. It's simple. It's mundane, but it's all about. And I know you already have gratitude and you're grateful for things, but it's really about making the most out of those moments, because we don't know when that other thing is going to happen, or those other things are going to happen. And time goes by so fast. So it's really about pursuing the things that you're most passionate about, which is beautiful. And it's also about keeping those people close to you and spending as much time as you can with them.
Yeah.
So, and I think people miss that, and we don't teach that enough in school.
Yeah, 100%. And being on the airplane, and not that I've experienced, I guess, my deployment was a combat deployment, but it wasn't a hard deployment like some of the load masters and senior guys who experienced in Iraq, Afghanistan. But being on the plane, there was a few instances where I was like, well, I realized that, and this is kind of dark, but life can end at any time. And it's not just on the airplane doing that, but like driving, I don't know, maybe a heart attack, something random could happen. And like you said, appreciating just the smallest things, the people who you have close, the friends and family, the simple moments where you can just be like, wow, I appreciate living and experiencing. And then even being appreciative for the not so great times, or the rough times, or the stressful times, or time, because the fact that you could have a challenging time or a dark time, or you're struggling through something, or you're learning about something, or you're stressed about something, just the ability, the freedom to be able to do that and experience that, and that human experience. It's like, wow, like I get to have, I don't want to say a bad day, but like, I don't know, like I'm stressed out because of work. Well, I get to be stressed out. That's kind of the thing I'm trying to learn and implement in my life as much as possible.
Yeah. Well, and look, it's not easy at all. Yeah. So I just want to put that out there. But to take a step back from those awful moments and go, okay, what can I learn from that? Maybe you learn. Okay, I'll give you a quick example. So, one of the reasons why I was the third person in the building at the high school, when I taught at the high school, it was usually the custodian, it was usually the library aide, and then usually me. Of course, I was close to the school as well, but one of the reasons why, among many, was that I was able to get a lot of things done before it got cray-cray. People in the building, people interrupting you, all that stuff. But the other part was this. I was doing it to avoid the chaos when trying to pull into that parking lot closer to when school starts. So what I'm saying is let's say I have a bad day where I come in and it's like, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to be late. I'm starting to get stomach cramps. I'm getting a headache. The student just walked in front of the truck, not even looking. Okay, I'm trying to back into the spot. No one's giving me 2 seconds. These are the little conflicts, by the way, we talk about in stories. So, okay, I get home and I'm like, all right, what do I learn from that? Well, I learned I'm going to try to avoid that. Okay, well, how can I avoid that? All right, so I'm going to be earlier. Sometimes I would get messages from guidance at the last minute to write a report because there's going to be a meeting between guidance teachers and students. Now, normally they're supposed to send it out a week in advance. Well, if I had gotten to school on time, not early, on time, I'm supposed to stop teaching to write this report? Because if I don't write the report, it looks poorly on me. I can't go into the meeting going, well, they never sent me the email. I can't do that. So then it makes you look incompetent or like you're not doing your job. So that was another reason I used to try to put out fires in terms of anything that was requested, or parents needed something that maybe didn't come through. And I usually always had it forwarded to home too. But so it's taking up those, those may have been terrible examples, but if you take anything that is negative or that causes you distress, or, okay, take a step back. What can I do about this? How can I navigate through that? That's another way that mindset will
Yeah.
work. And the other thing too, real quick, about appreciating people. So in February, my wife and I were married for 20 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, tell me about it. Thank you. But one thing that I share with people is that every single day does not go by after 20 years where we still don't say thank you for even the silliest things. Hey, thanks for emptying the dishwasher. Thanks for feeding the dog. So we make, and during the week, we don't see much of each other. Even on text, we'll go, hey, thanks for doing this. I emptied this out. And so it's that constant appreciation and not taking that person for granted. So that's something else too, I think, that we lose sight of. And again, given that anything can happen at any time, it's just a way to keep things in perspective.
Yeah, 100%. That's the truth. You never know. I don't know. I guess you never know when, and this is, I guess, sad, but could be the last time speaking to somebody. And it may not be something like them passing away, but what if that friend moves away and you lose contact, right? What if, and I even always try to do it as well, like holding the door open, smiling to somebody, asking somebody's day. Like you see a cool t-shirt, you say, hey, cool t-shirt, or great shoes, or wow, you look really great today. You never know when that one little compliment or just smiling or holding the door open, someone could be having a terrible day. They could be late to work that day and struggling, and you hold the door open and say, hey, have a great day. And they're like, wow, it kind of resets their mind for positivity. And
you got it. Yep.
Percent.
I just worked with a senior who is going to college, and she works at a pharmacy, and she was kind of the course was for conversation skills, and she felt that hers needed a little more improvement. And then she felt she was talking a little bit about the job, and I said, well, wait a minute, how do you greet people that come to you? And well, I smile and I ask them how their day is going. I said, do you realize how powerful that is?
Yeah.
I said, you're going to disarm people with a smile. Yeah. I said, half these people, because she mentioned about senior citizens too, a lot of her clients or customers rather are senior citizens. I said, a lot of times they don't even see people. A lot of times people disregard them. I said, they're not feeling well. They have aches and pains. There's all these different things. They probably got back from the doctors, and you know how much your smile means? And for you to actually say, hey, how you doing? I said, you don't even realize how powerful that is.
Yeah.
So, and I never thought of it that way. Giddy up. Yeah, you got it. So, like you said, I think that's, and for example, sometimes things will happen where, like there was one part I used to go to with Holly, and one time I was putting her back up into the truck, and I turn, and there's an older couple walking by. They're doing the perimeter, I guess, of the park. So I looked over at them, and they saw me for a moment. I'm not sure how much they really saw me. Sometimes you just look in a direction or whatever. But anyway, I smiled, and neither of them smiled back. They had this like uncomfortable facial expression, like, oh, And so they walked by, and I get in the truck. And what I tell my students in the conversation course is, it would be so easy for us as humans to reflect on that and say, I'm never going to smile at anybody again. What they couldn't even smile back, or it'd be so easy to do that, right? But then we don't know what's going on in their minds or in their lives, just like they don't know what's going on in ours. So they may have seen me, but they may have, in terms of really seeing me,
Yeah.
they may have been looking at me, but not really
Yeah.
seeing me. They may have both, they may have just had an argument. They may have, they may be doing this as part of a doctor's request. You need to be walking, and maybe they're in
Yeah.
pain. It's so easy for us to make these assumptions, but what we see is not always what's
Yeah.
happening. Um, but it's nice to disarm people with a smile. It's nice to be polite by opening the doors, or saying please, or saying thank you. And part of it is, especially after COVID,
Yeah.
people have lost their sense of
Uh,
civility, politeness. Part of it is a frustration with the economy and their
yeah.
lives and all that. But people have had to reacclimate themselves to learning how to interact with the
Yeah.
public again.
Yeah. And
It's
yeah.
tough.
Yeah. And I think what you said was pivotal, because earlier when we started, we talked about authentic embassy and being authentic, right? Part of it is being authentic, but also you mentioned really quick, and I think we brushed over, was like, even when you experience negativity from other people, sometimes, like you said, somebody might be looking at you or may say something or do something, and it's not implied negativity. Or if it is, you never know. And having that awareness to know what's going on behind the scenes, what's their life like? The common trope we see, right, is the bully getting bullied at home, right? You never know what someone's life and what they're going through. And so if someone gives you hate, right? Having that ability to just be like a little of sympathy and empathy, and understanding that they might just be going through some stuff and they may not be able to regulate it. They may not have that ability to healthily get away with that. And also, if they're hating on you, they're putting energy into you. It's like Floyd Mayweather always says, love me or hate me, you're still buying the ticket to see me fight. So it's like, it's the truth of anything.
I'm rent free in your head.
Exactly. It's like, I was recently on Ian Bick's podcast, Locked In, and he asked me a question. We were talking about just, haters on the internet. We kind of had a few minutes talking about that. And because he was talking about my club feet, and I have chicken legs. So, he's like, in high school or, in boot camp, did anybody ever make fun of you? And I said, yeah, a little bit, but, you just got to have thick skin. I always thought, like, if they're paying attention to my legs, they're still looking at me, right? They're still thinking about it. So, you got to play that mental game a little bit.
Were you on? So you were on a podcast?
I was. It's actually coming out tonight at 7 p.m. He's really big. I was surprised. Like, I went to a studio. He's a really nice guy. Like, this is my first interaction with someone who's like a professional who does this for their living. So I was like, he's got 250,000 subscribers. I didn't know he was from Connecticut at first. So when I went on the show, he like shook my hand. Like, he was super, super like humble. Like, I went to a studio a few weeks ago to film with my friend, and we just filmed a podcast there. But he's just like the most humble guy. Like, again, I didn't expect it, but he's actually friends with Mike Tyson. So he hangs out with him every now and then. He has a few Instagram posts, and I asked him, because I saw it before going, I was like, what do you think of, like, how's Mike Tyson like? Like, what, you think big boxer, right? This brutal warrior, right? Essentially. And he's like, no, he's the nicest guy, most humble. Like, you see him on social media talking about stuff, but he's just a humble, like, he cares about people. And I was like, wow, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, you don't think so? I'm like, I've never met him, so I can't say what I know about him, but we know him as this fighter, this brutal warrior, this guy who went to jail and stuff. And so it was kind of crazy to even be able to go to his studio and be on the show. And then, I have his number now, and I texted him to schedule an appointment down there. And it's just crazy to be like, Mike Tyson, like you're a professional like you do podcasting for a living. So that was kind of interesting to be able to.
But once you establish yourself, you're going to be able to, and you pretty much already have established yourself. But as you continue to grow, look, I think what is amazing about podcasting, and I've said this on a couple of the ones that I've been on, is that people are hungry for this kind of interaction. And it's because people are not, either someone's trying to sell you something, or they're blowing smoke your way, and immediately we're thinking, okay, so why are you complimenting?
Yeah.
What is what's your agenda? And then what we see on cable news, for example, is just constant. There's no real discourse.
Yeah.
It's just talking points and screaming and yelling and really hyperbolizing everything to the point where people aren't sure what is. And it's tough when you have these places that have both opinion and news stories that are fact kind of combined, because then you don't even know what to. So it's really difficult in that sense. And then since COVID, in my space, I love where we've had people who are constantly in the news or in the limelight, who talk about mental illness, who talk about anxiety, who talk about introversion, who talk about being able to engage, being able to trust. They're much more open. And I think that was a real, you wouldn't get that in a flashy Kelly Clarkson, I'm going to be on for 15 minutes in between commercials kind of talk. And what the podcasting has been able to do is allow people to have these conversations with various people. And it's nice to hear people have that conversation or have a healthy debate.
Yeah.
This is the way I look at it. This is the way you look at it. Okay. So I think that's what, the more that you continue to do what you're doing, you're going to have those opportunities to network and interact with so many people that will get to know you, especially because your interest is real, is genuine, is organic, is authentic. It's not, a list of things to try to further yourself, or there's some other agenda. And so the honest that you have for him, that'll be the honest I have for you, and people following you will have as you continue on the path. Because, that's the trajectory that you're on.
I appreciate. I really do. That means a lot. It means a lot. I'm kind of speechless. I genuinely appreciate that. So I don't want to, I'm interviewing you. I don't want to talk about myself too much.
I know, right? But I was trying to hold back. I was like, in prior to thinking about this, I was like, okay, I meant to do the Mr. Lecara thing first. I meant to actually text that to you. I didn't even do that. And then the other part was, okay, I haven't seen you for such a long time. I want to ask you questions. That's why I had to ask about the leadership. But I know where you're coming from, because it's so nice to see you. And I haven't had a chance to talk deeply.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And so I guess to answer kind of what you said, like podcasts, I started because I wanted to share my experience and others, like exceptional people like you, who've experienced life, who've accomplished things. Like, you're a 10 times published author. Most people never even publish one book, one thing, right? You're an actor, a producer, you've literally gotten into film. You started your own business, and you're helping people who are obviously struggling with authenticity, which is probably the core of 99% of societal's problems right now. Like, and so having people like you, having you being a mentor, you've helped me, even just in our conversations over text. Well, one, it was awesome to be able to talk. It's awesome to be able to talk with you like in person now, but
amen.
But being able to share your experiences to the audience and to people who may listen it, I know that could do dividends to people and entertain or inspire somebody to maybe write their first book or pursue acting or start their entrepreneurial career, or maybe somebody else who's done exceptional things be able to pursue a business or a program to help others, and get away from that. Like we mentioned earlier, just do it. Just get take that one step into the abyss that seems so scary. It's intimidating. I mean, back when I started the t-shirt, right? It all started because I made a t-shirt website, and I was like, I'm gonna design t-shirts about a year and a half ago now. But, one day I got out of work and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to set the website up and design a few t-shirts, and I'm just going to do it. And even now, I think the website needs to get another treatment, re-update. But, if I didn't start, then where would I be? You know what I mean? I wouldn't be here, and then in 5 years from now, I'm going to look back and be like, wow, that, if you don't start, the growth won't happen,
And that's the worst part, by the way. The adults I work with, that's in the background. Regret starts creeping up. And it's like, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. All right, well, let's start now. Let's start now. But also, when I work with people at that age, we also need to, put the brakes on for a moment. And let's look at the accomplishments. Let's look at, the things that have happened leading up. Because sometimes people could have the most incredible experiences, but look at it as, I've done nothing. And that's what happens in conversation, by the way. When people meet up with other people, they're thinking, oh my goodness, that person did that. That's cool. That person did that. I have nothing to do. Whoa, wait a minute. You just haven't recognized that. You haven't given light to that and seen how important or how pivotal these moments in your life have been. So that's that's part of it too. And then starting at the younger age, there's an activity I do with some of the students where it actually came from working with seniors in high school doing their college essays, because the essays are about, who are you now based on your experiences? How did those other experiences impact you? So it's really about recognizing that even in 18 years of life, what have you done? But I'll even do that with my 10 and 11-year-olds. Given your 10 years of experience, what stands out? Can you imagine being 10 or 11 years old and thinking about, but if you've gone to, I have a student in Australia who went to the Australian Parliament.
Oh, wow.
Well, maybe that would have, how do we know that when that young person is in his 20s or 30s that he doesn't decide to get into government or become a conservationist because of, one day I visited this building. We don't know how. So it's really just about, I don't think we do enough introspection. I don't think we do enough reflection. And that's really where a lot of that comes from. And again, probably the major thing that keeps popping up in the conversation is just start. Because then you'll know, okay, this doesn't work, so let me try this. All right, well, that works. All right, now let me build on that. Okay, that didn't work. Let me try. And the networking. And people really gravitate to others that are being real and are interested. Because if it looks like you have another agenda, people pick up on that and they want nothing to do with that.
That's true. I have a story to tell that's fitting. So about a week and a half ago, I was at Speaker School in Rhode Island, and this is for the entrepreneur program for veterans. And it was really cool. Like the teacher, the instructor himself, he's been motivational speaking, seminars for years. He's an older gentleman. He helps mainly his main business is helping gym owners, build their business and grow and expand. Right. But for us, he basically built us a program for public speaking in the terms of stay on stage or podcasting even type stuff.
Nice.
Some of these individuals in this group, but that attended the course are some highly exceptional. They're all we had 3 or 4 former Navy SEALs in our class, deployed. One guy deployed 7 back-to-back deployments, just warriors. It was just crazy to sit at a dinner table with them and just hear some of their stories and what they're doing. But this one guy, he's a little younger, and he's really cool. But I told him about the podcast and stuff like that. He listens. I didn't know he was listening since the beginning, since early on. But I asked him, I said, when are you coming on? Kind of joking around. He's like, what would we talk about? And I'm like, you're a former Navy SEAL starting your business. You've experienced all this in life. Like, he's like, you think so? I'm like, dude, like, you literally have done what some boys dream, like in the backyard when we used to pick up sticks and pretend they were guns and swords.
Yeah.
Like, most young kids dream of being commando. You know what I mean? You literally lived it, and you went through probably some of the toughest training a human being can ever go through.
Indeed.
And he was like, wow. He's like, he was like almost surprised that I was like, dude, and that's not just it. I mean, you're starting a business, right? And like, I didn't even know much about him. So I followed him on Instagram during that course. And I recently saw he's going to be on might be a public speaking event. In his first year of one of the businesses he worked for, he helped grow the company to $2 million in revenue. I didn't know this when I said that to him. And I was like, you're wondering what we're going to talk about? Like, you're and then he told a story about Navy SEAL selection and buds training. And he like, during training, they were doing like carrying the boats in the water, doing like Navy SEAL stuff. And a big wave came, and it was the middle of the night, so we couldn't see nothing, and basically slammed him against a rock. And he didn't realize it, but he hit both his legs in like 5 places and kept running on it for 2 weeks before the instructors forced him to go to medical.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't know. I was like, what do you mean? What are we going to talk about? And it was just a realization that most people don't realize, like you said, that 10-year-old who, even in just 10 years, you could do something exceptional. But even people who are high level like that, who've done literally exceptional things that movies are made about and stories are written about, still feel that way. Like, what have I done? What have I done? Who am I? And I'm not saying that that's how he felt completely, but that interaction, kind of solidified that we all kind of, I feel like, always just go through life and never take a moment to look back and be like, I did that. Like, I accomplished that. I or I'm doing this, like, be proud of yourself a little bit, not to be arrogant.
Well, there are those things that come to people naturally. Like, for example, when you're, I'm going to say like a teenager, like when you're going into the workforce at first, maybe you're 18, 19, or maybe you just got out of college. Sometimes when you're doing the resume, it's difficult to figure out what to put on it.
Yeah.
Because the things that have come naturally to you, that's just who you are. Not realizing that paired up next to other people, that's an asset of yours, but we don't look at it that way. And the gentleman you're speaking of is very similar to the millionaire I was talking about, where they're just humble in that regard. They set out to do something that their way of approaching it is to put 110% into it. And they know that it's going to work out. In some way, it's going to work out. And then that's what their mindset is. And so later on, when they're looking for recognition, that's not their style. We are awed by how they were able to get through that, or, I didn't even think about that, or, how the 2 weeks.
Yes.
I figured you were going to say 2 miles still, but then you said he ran for 2 weeks. But for him, that's all he's ever known.
Yeah.
That's who I am. I am not going to reduce my effort at all. I'm going to, no matter what, I'm going to walk this through. I'm going to do what I can. And I think, there's a lot to learn from that, because those individuals, for them, that's just their DNA. That is, and, but there are people who will hear that in a podcast, but still never understand that. Because that's just, they're the ones that started.
Yes.
They didn't wait.
Yeah.
They and then looked at, okay, how do I get from point A to point B? If I have to go around, what do I do? And there are some people that will understand that to a point, but they just won't have it in their DNA.
Yeah.
But and there are some too who are stunted, because when they look at that, they go, or they say, I'll never get to that point, or I could never do that, or well, he's only doing that because he loves the military, or like for the gentleman who was the millionaire. Well, he's only doing that because he has that experience. Oh my goodness, you're already putting up
Yeah.
walls before you've had a
Yes.
chance to jump in.
Yes.
And that's you're self-defeating
Yeah.
even before you
Yeah.
begin.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing, okay, so, and we talked about it in the independent film, but the biggest thing is the prison chains and the jail cell that you put in your own mind. If there's a will, there's a way. You can always find a way to accomplish whatever you want. It's just, it may not be exactly how you think and vision, or it may not be the prescription someone else puts on you or how somebody else did it. But if you want something bad enough, if you start, you're going to, and like you said, it's in someone's DNA. It's the way someone will just go about it. If you just take the step to start, that alone will pay off in the end. Anything you do is compounding. Like, yeah, you may start off and you may suck at something. It's okay to suck. Like, that's the whole point of starting, is you need to not know how to do something and actually do it to get good at it. And so that's the biggest thing. Like, I try to, like, I have family, friends, and other people or people in the service who have asked about business, or even kids at school, friends at school who have asked about like joining the service or anything that I'm doing, podcasting. I'm like, you just need to start. Like, I could show you the websites that I use, but just make it, like, literally record on your phone. If you don't have a mic or anything, record on your phone and just post it. It's going to suck. Like, I did a little personal exercise because I was beating myself up. I'm like, I'm not as up there. I was having these expectations of where I should be. Right. Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah. I was like, who's the biggest podcaster in the world? Joe Rogan. So I'm like, let's see if I could find his first episode. I was like, let's find his first episode. Believe it or not, his first episode was just him in a webcam with, I think it's Ari Shafir, and they were rambling about conspiracy theories, the quality.
In his living room.
Yeah. And it, like, the footage wasn't the greatest. Like, and I'm not talking down on him because obviously he's paved the way for podcasting, but if he can start there and look where he's gotten to, if you just start and you stick with your heart and you're in it for the right reasons, you're not trying to make $1 million in 90 days or impress somebody, but just do it because you have to, because your heart is telling you, you'll be set.
And there are different tiers, by the way, of success too. So for example, you're going to find somebody who might, you're going to, for example, the gentleman who knows Mike Tyson, and through your podcasting experiences, you're going to find somebody who was able to help people grow businesses to be incredibly, lucrative. You're going to find somebody who just is making enough to get by. And maybe for them, it's more of a hobby than something else. But again, the whole point here is what is making you happiest, right? I know I've had some people, pardon me, I can't stop coughing. I've had some people talk to me about, growing this and growing that and growing. All that sounds phenomenal. But the problem with that is that, am I still going to be able to dedicate the same amount of attention that I'm able to dedicate to the people that I work with? That's great. We can grow this, we can grow that. If I find that I need to bring in a more, let's say, significant income, okay, well, I need to transition into other things. I'm not going to be able to continue to do what I'm doing full time if all of a sudden my goal is $1 million, or something like that, because I'm not in a truly lucrative business. But as long as it's helping you get to where you want to go, that's what's important. But just having more business to the point where now you can't focus personally on your clientele. Or let's say, like, I don't know that Joe Rogan records every single day. I think he records a couple times a week. But, imagine if his scheduling was, he's doing 2-3 a day, 7 days a week. Well, that might be lucrative, but is that going to be enjoyable?
Exactly.
Right? Are you still going to be able to sit there and truly have that conversation. Because that's part of the things that I enjoy a lot with my students too, is prior to us starting, as I mentioned earlier, I might ask, what's the highlight of your week? But it's also knowing what's going on in their lives. How are they feeling? Oh, that's great. As I share in my conversation courses too, I am very much interested in what's going on. I am your number one supporter. I love to, celebrate you and what you're doing and all. I really enjoy that conversation to know how, and on a personal level, on a selfish level, it also helps me to know that we're going to be okay as a group, with all the chaos going on. It's just really neat to hear. It's really neat to give them a voice, and I really appreciate what they bring to each of our sessions. And like I said, at the same time, in a selfish way, I'm able to say, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. So for me, I go to bed at night feeling pretty good because I have this feeling that after my interactions with my families, it's going to be okay. Now, if I lose that, if I don't have that ability because now I have too many and it's just a class or they're just a group of people, clients, student, whatever, you're missing something. So, I think that's the toughest part about growing. You still want to stay with whatever is your mission or whatever is the authentic part of it. Why are you doing what you're doing? Of course, in the background, it's I need to earn a living, right? But why are you doing what you're doing? And so sometimes that can be difficult navigating that. But as long as you don't lose that, then you'll always be able to enjoy, for the most part, what you're doing.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I 100% agree with that. And I guess forefront of it is like you said, what do you want to do? What do you want your life to be like? Who do you want to impact? And again, I don't want to start internet beef, but like there's a lot of people in the self-improvement space, and I'm putting air quotes because they say self-improvement, but they're like, you got to make $1 million and have 10 girlfriends. Of these young men who are super impressionable, looking for a purpose, because society it's hard for a young man to find his way nowadays. And so they're giving them,
especially,
yes, they're giving them these material, like a prescription of you need 10 girlfriends and $1 million and a Lamborghini to be considered successful, when it's like, what do you want your life to be? What type of relationships do you want? If you're starting a business, who do you want? Like you said, who do you want to serve? Do you want to deeply impact maybe 5, 10 people, or do you want to impact the world? Because again, it doesn't help nobody if it becomes a factory, if it becomes a factory, if it becomes senseless.
Well, the world, though, that's the other thing, too, is people think, I want to impact the world. Phenomenal. I've talked to a lot of people like that. They want to impact the world. Do you know, though, the world is technically your family, your community, your church, your state. World doesn't have to be defined by, I need to reach someone who's, 300,000 miles away.
Yeah.
And, so the thing is how do you define the world?
Yeah.
How do you define wealth, by the way? And kind of like you were talking about the podcast starting out, when I started doing the online stuff, there's the question of, well, how am I going to, depending on your business, there's always that I have to have so many clients in the pipeline, and there's that thought of, okay, I'm going to have a dry time, I'm going to, a dry time. But again, you got to start, and then things will pick up. I mean, I don't even do much advertising, and I have a lot of stuff popping up, and I'm so grateful for that. And part of that has to do with the amount of work, the amount of effort that I've put into what I've had prior to that. But 99.9% of that has been authentic, organic, genuine. I want to make sure that you succeed. I want to make sure that you had, that you're being heard. I want to make sure that you feel that this was worth your time. And so because of that, thankfully, business will grow because
Yes.
of that. But I mean, it doesn't happen overnight,
Mm-hmm.
and there's part of it where you're going, okay, now how do I, but during those dry times, it's really about, okay, well, how do I pick up on other
Mm-hmm.
skills that might be
Yeah.
needed, or how do I take it to another level, but looking at it differently? Look, things are not going to always happen or rarely happen overnight. But as long as you're living, this is going to sound
Yeah.
cheesy, but as long as you're living every day with purpose and meaning, so what if it takes you 5 years? At least you can look back and go, I spent every day towards my goal, and there's going to be things that are going to come in and disrupt. Let me tell you, this past 7, 8 months have been awful in one way. We moved, which is a positive thing, but trying to do all that while leading very busy lives is impossible. And then, and it's not just it's leading up to the move; it's the move, and then it's unpacking. I remember I had a client at 8 a.m. No, excuse me, it was 8 a.m. for them, so it was 5 a.m. for me. My whole home office was still full of stuff, and then I still had computer stuff that was at the other place. So it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm driving back to the other place, and then I'm trying to set the stuff. By the time I ended up, I still had the session, but I had to use one of my. I used an iPad, and I didn't even have a light bulb or a lamp in the room. I looked like I was doing it from an underground bunker. So, but the most important thing was to make sure to service the
Mm-hmm.
client. And I'm going to do everything I can before I go, I'm sorry, I have to cancel. So your time is important. I want to make sure that you know that I recognize how important that is. Now, that person didn't, once we got on, that's when I told the person I had moved. But up until that point, I hadn't said anything about moving. Again, it's all about them. It's all about the
Yeah.
client. But, and then we had, the dog died, and then we had a pipe burst. So, it's been a great 7 or 8 months work-wise, but with these, the point I'm trying to make is there are going to be things coming at you that you don't
Mm-hmm.
expect, and it's going to be a challenge, and it might take you away from what you want to do, or from your what you have your heart set on. But again, is every day a day of purpose? Is every day are you working towards that goal, and you'll get through it? As long as we have that mindset, even the most difficult days are going to be okay.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are, that's it, I'm done. I give up. I'm all
Yeah.
done. I can't do this. No, you don't understand.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy. And even once you reach a certain point, well, that's just another phase
Yeah.
that's over, because the other part kicks in. You still need to, it's not a one and done.
Mm-hmm.
Never.
Yeah.
It's lifelong.
Yeah. That's, yeah. You know, and this is another realization that goes hand in hand, stress is always going to be there. Stress, frustration, doubt, all the negative thoughts and struggles that every human deals with is going to be there. And it's a reactionary thing to the events that happen in our life, right?
Yeah.
And so when you realize that, I'm always going to be stressed. I could achieve my goals, right? I could achieve everything. And I'm still going to be stressed to some extent. Now, it may be stressed on a different level, right? You might have something else so while you may be stressed, right? That's just a feeling. That's just a reaction. And like you said, when those events come up and you may be taken away from what you can do for a week or a day or an hour even, right? And you may not be able to get done what you set out to accomplish, or it may not be going as planned, or maybe it's taking longer than you expected. But like you said, that one little tick further, that 1% further, if your mind was on it and maybe you couldn't accomplish what you set out to do today, but then tomorrow you come up with an even more efficient game plan and you get it done. Or that week from now, right? You're like, I'm going to get this, and this done. This is how it is. at the end of the day, you're still furthering yourself, right? You can't.
Yes.
And
yes.
And things are going to go wrong. So my last podcast guest, I had he actually, his day job right now, well, one of his day jobs is he does toy photography, which is really unique. And he reviews like action figures on YouTube, but he started in 2009. Cool. He has over, I think, like 30,000, something crazy, like 30,000 subscribers. Wow. But during the interview, I had Titus down here. I learned my lesson. Don't let the dog down when I'm having podcasts. My lighting, I only have one lighting. I had another one coming down this way. Titus chewed it and I didn't realize. So it just goes out and I see it in the corner of my screen. I'm like, uh-oh. So I keep going. My camera starts flickering and I think it's happened a few times, but the little like, please wait kind of screen popped up and I'm like, oh man, like try not to get distracted. Things are going to go bad. I was stressed out during that. Yeah. But I just kept chugging along. And guess what? That interview, I just started editing it and it came out pretty good, even despite the technical difficulties. Because as long as you just keep moving forward, and that should be published soon, but as long as you keep moving forward is the key, like you said.
And that's what, the thing I recommend to people is, depending on what their path, what their passion happens to be, check out memoirs by people who are in that space. A lot of times that'll help explain how they got to where they are. And if I know people watch TV differently these days, but if you look at the commercials, like sometimes I can't help but laugh, but sometimes people will say, how come there's no Ferrari commercials, or how come there's no hot rod commercials? Well, that's because the people who can afford them aren't watching TV. Right? I mean, they may sit down every once in a while, but the thing is what are they doing?
That's true.
They're pursuing their dream, right? They're every day is a day of they're making progress. Every day is a day of purpose.
Yeah.
So, or to hear that Elon Musk in the factory, or even in the Twitter when he took over Twitter, sleeping in the office, or I can relate to not employing and having a huge company, but I would sometimes work until the early hours of the morning, whether it was school stuff or whether it was the writing, and then sleep on the floor. Sometimes I never even made it into the bedroom until it was almost time to get up. At the house that we had in Connecticut, I ended up moving the home office from the main floor to the second floor. So all I had to really do was go across the hall to get to bed, because otherwise I ended up just usually sleeping downstairs and not even making it up the stairs. So, oh my goodness, I did that even with the, we were in a townhouse before we moved in October. And so that was 3 levels. And so on the main level, the ground level, I should say, off the garage was a room, and that was my office. And I had a futon in there, and a lot of times I would end up sleeping on the futon, because what I would end up doing is during the summer, it's not inconceivable to have up to like 30 or 35 classes for the week, or sessions for the week. And so for some of that, though, you're personalizing it, or you're writing curriculum, or you're doing different things. Well, my only break is really taking the dog out, coming back in, maybe getting a bite to eat, coming back in. Otherwise, it's the course or the class or the session itself, and then it's prepping or doing wrap-ups after I'm done. Well, why would you do that? That sounds insane. I thought you had it made because you work on your own. Okay, so people just don't understand. You will probably work harder than you ever worked before. But it's your time.
Yeah.
You're not doing something for somebody who's never going to recognize you. And by recognize, I don't mean they're running down the hall with a poster going, "You're awesome." What I'm talking about is just that simple, quiet acknowledgement of, "Hey, thanks. I appreciate you covered the other day," or that was nice work. Thanks. And that's, by the way, statistically speaking, I don't know if it was Forbes or who it was. There's a statistic out there that's the reason why most people will leave their jobs. It's not so much money. They're willing to be loyal to an organization or a company or an employer that respects and honors them
Yeah.
and appreciates
Yeah.
them. And most people don't need anything big. They just need someone to authentically say, hey, I really appreciate you doing that. Or that was a really nice thing. You made us look good. And we're missing that in so many different sectors. So that's why people are like, hey, I might as well just do something on my own. But it doesn't matter what it is. It's going to be a lot of
Yeah.
work. Now, do I have a lot of free time? It depends on how you look at
Yeah.
free time. Because I can't, like right now, summers are the busiest seasons. So I don't get to really have a woohoo kind of summer. But I do get in between my sessions, like I was saying earlier, I can take the dog to the water, I take it for a walk. We have those moments. Better than being cooped up in a building. Better than I can't see out the windows, or I'm in some basement that's mold, full of mold, or I get to be out, and I would appreciate that more. I do appreciate that, I should say. I appreciate that more than what would be a traditional kind of setting. But you have to do what makes you happy. And I have to give credit to somebody. I went to a student's wedding. Let's see, 2015, I was 2014, 2015, around that time. And I had the student as a seventh grader. I worked with the family, known the family for a while as well. But, now he's in his 30s. I went to his wedding, and maybe at the time he was in his late 20s. But what was interesting was he had bought into a business. He was first working, watch me get all this wrong too, but he was first working at a factory or something. And what he did is he bought into a business with someone. And the thing is, he lived near the water, a lake, and that was his life. He had a place right near the lake. He bought it. I believe the business was a canoe business or something. And by the way, if I got it wrong, I apologize. But my perception was, and what he had shared with me, was that this was his life. He left doing that factory thing and was doing this. And it was like, I think he found the secret. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, this is fantastic. I forget what his wife does, but I just remember being so proud of him, because it takes so many people years into their adulthood going, I'm tired of this, and making this really radical transition to try to. And here he was at the time, I guess in his 20s, and I'm like, wow. So I got to thinking, though, after that, we need to begin following the same kind of advice that we give to young people. What are you doing? Are you happy with your life? And then coming back to who are you? Who are you really? What is it that you're, and because I think that's where a lot of that unhappiness comes from. And the stress part, you're right. You're always going to deal with stress, but consistent stress is like, they're finding it's like 60% of illnesses are related to excessive stress that never stops.
Yes.
Why would you not want to make some sort of a radical change?
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. I mean, and there are people who are happy doing that 9 to 5. Like that's going back to, does it make you happy? Is this fulfilling to you and what you envisioned for your life? So, and again, I hate to keep using myself, but recently, when I came back, I was looking for jobs. I was like, I need to find a job. I was going to go to school for something I wasn't passionate about. Like now I'm in school for film and media studies and production stuff. And I love it. I haven't gotten into the meat and potatoes of getting to, work with fancy cameras and do some cool stuff yet, but I love it so far. It's interesting. I don't know. I like get obsessed about cameras and stuff. And so to me, I'll wake up earlier and I'll go into class earlier. I'll be more passionate about those classes, right? And I've realized that if I pursued the biomedical engineering, I may have, maybe I flunked out of college. That's probably what would have happened. But if I got through, what would my life have been? Like, would I have been passionate and happy? You know? And then starting the podcast, it's like every time I get to have a guest on or talk about something and ramble like a crazy person to a camera, there's something fulfilling about it. But like you said, there's nights where I stay up till 2, 3 a.m. having to wake up the next morning, editing a video or doing this, doing that, writing the graphic novel. I had a few nights where I had like my snacks. I had so some energy drinks and I'm like, let's crush this. And I got like 10, 20 pages done. And I look over and it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I have to wake up at like 6. Oh.
Yeah.
And so, but at the end of the day, like I get to go to bed when I do sleep early, you know, like fulfilled. I'm like, oh, I'm doing it. Even if it's not, even if it's not to the level that we expect, right? At the beginning, right? It's, being able to pursue your dreams. Why not? You're doing a disservice to your community. I heard this quote. You're doing a disservice to your community, your family, the world by not pursuing the dreams and what you're passionate about. You know?
Yes. Yeah. And even you know, just to be clear, even the 9 to 5 is fine. But as long as you're fulfilled by that, if it's meeting what it is that you want out of life, even the teaching thing, you know, part of what was happening with teaching is just that. First of all, I think that at the elementary level and at the middle school level, I think first of all, the people that you work with are a little different than the high school level, because at the younger levels, you know, it's all about making the day a great day for the kids, right? Because they're young and you kind of always operate in that it's going to be a good day voice. So that kind of bleeds into how everybody interacts with each other. Whether or not inside they're, you know, steaming, they still operate with the, no, I'm not really happy about why you did that. So, but once you get into the high school level, like the 2 high schools that we had, and again, I'm this is observation. I'm not throwing shade at anybody or anything, but they kind of looked like, and I don't know if you'll agree, but it's kind of like an office building. You know, just the way that they're set up, and everybody's split from so many different people, and it's just like I was on the second floor, and lunch is on the bottom floor, and you know, you have 20 minutes to eat. It's going to take you 20 minutes to get the food. So, you know, that doesn't make any. And then just at the younger levels, people seemed to be much more enthusiastic about things. And when I go to a workshop, I even taught corporate. So when I go to a workshop, I want somebody to provide the same level of enthusiasm, interest that I provide when I teach an adult or a young person. And when I don't get that, I'm a little disappointed. I'll use that word because I want that time that I'm here to be worth something. And I'm going to be much more, I'm going to feel it's worth much more if I see you're excited about what you're doing. And that's what I wish sometimes I had more of when I was at the secondary level. I wish there were more that were passionate about what they were doing and were excited. But what you have is you have a system that just beats on you. There's not as much accountability as there should be in certain situations and circumstances. You know, there's so much that you have to kind of fight against that after a while that does begin to impact you. So that's another thing too, is to think about, all right, if you're not getting fulfilled from what you're doing, then consider transitioning.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so when we moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, that seemed the perfect time to kind of consider that type of transition. It was never, always loved what I was doing, but I kind of wish I had people who had that same kind of enthusiasm, and that, because I think even when you have to fight an uphill battle, if you're surrounded by like-minded people and we all have the same mindset, you can do anything. But if everybody's feeling kind of beat down, that's kind of a difficult situation to really, because again, in front of the students, you want to make sure to give, you want to present yourself in the very best way. And I was always a geek when it came to the stuff that we were covering. A lot of the stuff very much excited me. But again, it's even better if you have people surrounding you that feel the same way. So the 9 to 5 is going to be fine, so long as you feel as if you're being inspired and motivated. Not just that you're always the one doing that. We need to do that collectively for and to each other.
That's pivotal. That's I think that's the key to a happy life overall, is just being able to be motivated and passionate. And then going back to like what you said about gratitude with like your family, like, your personal relationships, the wife, the friends, co-workers, right? It's full circle, I think, definitely.
And even if you're on your own, it's really about looking in the mirror and going, hey, I'm pleased with this. I know who this person is. All right, but I'm not pleased with that. All right, well, what can we do to, so maybe I can't afford to go to a gym. Well, neither could Arnold Schwarzenegger. He used anything he could find in the house to lift with. You don't need to. I think we also have that in our minds or our heads, that we must go here. We must do this. Oh, it's going to take so much money. It's amazing. Like what we've also started to do is we've started to declutter a lot of our stuff. We moved, and in that, we should have done it before we moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. But we had this realization that, hey, wait a minute, we have all this stuff. What do we need with it? And so we got rid of quite a bit. But then when we moved, we did that again. And I believe we could probably even get rid of even more. But think about what happens. So I'm on a what is it called? I'm on an email listing for an auction house that we have that's local, and that's where I got my desk from. It's great. Wow. But think about how many families where the older relatives, they pass and then they haven't really done much, and you have all this stuff now that people have to go through or get rid of. And we went through that with my mom. She moved during COVID from Connecticut to Massachusetts, and then she was just all this stuff. And it's just better once you get to a certain. I think sometimes people talk about finances, which is great, right? As you're preparing, as you get older, but at the same time, also being aware of either start giving the stuff away. But even if you don't downsize the building that you're living in, the size of your house, consider that all this stuff at some point, if we don't get rid of it, it's going to be on someone else's shoulders. I'm not trying to be negative or anything, but I think it's a responsible thing for us to get rid of. Stuff in closets that have been looked at forever. Some of the stuff is, has meaning, but what can you declutter? What can you get rid of that makes your life easier and everybody else's life easier as well?
Yeah, that's the that. And when I think so I think there's a very, very strong message with that, because we attribute, right? Like, you think, oh, that's just like a physical thing, like clean up the house, spring cleaning, get rid of stuff. But it's also an opportunity. I think there's and it might be a subconscious, but a psychological effect where when you declutter, it's almost like you're purging things. You're purging distractions, maybe. You're almost starting fresh. You know, you get a new page on the notepad to say, I just got rid of all this stuff, the stuff that I don't need, I don't use. Like, maybe you could give it to somebody who can use it or who will repurpose it, right? Who can actually put it into something of value, I guess, right? But then it's almost like a fresh note. You get an opportunity to reset, right? It's like when you clean the house, right? You breathe. It almost feels like the air in your house is super fresh when you get to do a deep cleaning or whatever. You're like, you know, and I got to do that because I've started to accumulate a bunch of stuff. So I got to kind of, I've been thinking about that the past few days. I'm like, you know, I have a lot of just random stuff I need to kind of bring to Goodwill or give away, you know? But yeah.
Well, even, one of the things I used to do in the classroom is that it's so easy for you to run out the door at the end of the day. Oh my goodness, I've been here since 6 o'clock or 6:30 or what have you, or 5:30 and just leave the desk. The problem with that is, consider what happens when you come back in the next morning. Now you have a mess that you have to first deal with. Whenever we used to travel, we used to make sure the house was all clean and all tidied up. So when we come back in from traveling, we don't have to do anything, you know, just unpacking and finally relaxing. So as you get older, I think it's, and by older, I mean advanced age, where you can't do as much, you know, you don't have as much energy, but having less things means there's less to have to clean.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you should be just enjoying your time. You shouldn't have to, because it's going to feel like the minute you just finish cleaning, it's going to be time to start all over.
Yeah.
You know? And so even here at home, going back to the desk cleaning, the way I have things set up from my schedule and the way I work that out and my desk is that when I retire for the evening, I'm not worried about what's going to happen the next day. I got to clean it. I come in, I'm ready to go. So long as the internet is working, I'm ready to go.
That's something I've started to do with the podcasting as well. Is like, because I have one camera right now and one good tripod. So since I'm on the go with the camera, I don't always keep the setup the same way. So like last night, I got ready for our interview today. And I set up the light, I tested it, set up the camera, tested it, made sure the software, there was no bugs or maintenance, you know, made sure my inverter was plugged in, make sure Titus didn't chew any extra cords. But because I had my questions, I knew what I was going to ask you to some extent, but I wrote them out, everything pretty much verbatim what I wanted to say in that introduction phase, so that when I stepped to the computer this morning, I was ready to go. I could take a minute, breathe, if something did come up, I could weather the storm for a few minutes and kind of be ready to flex a little bit and not be like, because
that shows without us even realizing it. It shows, and in your delivery and in how you interact, and
100%. And even today, since later on I'm going to be going and doing some videography stuff, filming some stuff, I'm thinking, oh God, I got to repack everything. But normally what I do is I have my batteries charged. I planned out a little bit, but I'll pack everything up the night before or a few hours before. And so that I know, almost like a checklist, I have my camera, my tripod, my mics, everything set up. So, you know, you can facilitate that. And then going back to when things go wrong or you're super busy, if you have everything set up and everything organized in that way, you can almost be regimented and be like, okay, so now I can spend this time. I may only have an hour. I may only have an hour to pursue my passion. But because I was so organized with my 9-to-5 stuff or my school stuff or whatever it may be, you get that hour of undivided focus on that and get to grind on something you're passionate about for a little bit.
It literally gives you more freedom. And that's another thing too, is that, again, being as busy as I've ever been, busier than even when I was teaching at traditional school. But it's all about being purposeful about how you spend the day. You know, even dedicating that time to having a
Yeah.
moment to breathe,
Yeah.
even dedicating
Mhm.
that, because I'll have some people, especially in the beginning, like, you don't answer your phone. Well, okay, I'll answer texts or emails, but I can't have the phone dictate what I do during the
Yeah.
day. So technically, I have the phone off. It's just that there's no notifications. But that way, when I have an opportunity, I look at the phone. Okay, answer the text or answer the. But I have to guard my mood, so
Mhm.
I'm there for the people that I work
Yeah.
with, who have hired me to teach a course or to coach or what have you. So and then in between, especially if it's pretty intense, I need that moment to make sure I can breathe
Yeah.
and get other little things, whether it's the dog has to go out or I have to feed the dog, or even if I have to
Oh,
prepare dinner, my wife coming home. So I need that's got to be important
yeah.
too. And that was a shift, by the way, from teaching traditionally, because we're kind of molded in that environment to be at everyone's beck and
Mhm.
call. The ultimate servant, many of the, or maybe it's old school
Yeah.
teachers, but it's whatever you need, anything, dropping everything. Okay. And it extends outside the classroom too, because we kind of then do that with everybody around us. What's the problem with that? Well, the problem with that is that expectation pours into everybody else, and they have that assumption that, oh, I can just, I pick up the phone, he'll do that, he'll drop
Yes.
everything, he'll do that. Yeah. And I'm not being negative. I'm not trying to, again, throw shade at
Yeah.
anybody. But what ends up happening though is that you stretch yourself so thin. There's no time for you.
Yeah.
you you need some of that time.
Yes.
Instead of trying to steal it somehow, some way. Wait a minute. No, 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 no. You put in enough time during the day,
Yeah.
during the week. You need to dedicate. That's called being
Mhm.
healthy. You need that time, and if you don't make that time important for you, the ramifications, it's not
Yeah.
pleasant. That's
That's
all.
the truth. Yeah.
Yeah. And even moving, when we moved from the other building, the other house rather, I have a home office here, but I had to set up a new system. Talk about that
Yeah.
routine. I had that routine in place, so I, for a while, couldn't just come in and sit down and boom, I'm ready to go, because I had to create new systems in this new location. Things are slightly in a different
Yeah.
place where for several years I had gotten used to where they were, and moving left instead of moving right, and then all that. And that can be unsettling
Yeah.
too. Um, but um, yeah, again, once that's down though, then that means that you open up that day to other things,
Um,
or you allow yourself to be able to do more
yeah. That's
if you can. By the way, you're entering Joe Rogan territory, huh?
yeah. I love Joe Rogan. He's actually I mean, I guess that's why I got inspired to with podcasting, because I was like, he's just a cool guy.
Well, between being able to, talk to different
Yeah.
people, you're also heading into Joe Rogan territory considering the time.
Oh yeah, that's right. Wow. I did not even expect it spend this long.
I looked over and I went,
Yeah.
oh, hot dog.
Oh,
Now we just need a table of
yeah.
cigars and right, all the beverages that he
Yeah.
has on his
Yeah.
table and the trinkets. That's all we
Yeah.
need, and then you're Joe Rogan.
Exactly.
Well, maybe you might need one more thing then, huh?
Yeah.
You have way too much hair. Oh.
Yeah. Shave it off.
For the
Well, I
listening
don't want to take up
audience,
too
we
much more
started.
of your time, and
It's just a testament to the fact, as much as we've been in communication, we haven't had a chance to
it's
speak
been
great.
24 hours.
I was listening to a podcast.
Yeah.
I listened to so many different ones. What was funny was they mentioned
Yeah.
it was a Joe Rogan one, where
Yeah.
it mentioned that with Joe, they connect with Joe. Fun at the fact that this is the only time they really get to have a conversation when they're being recorded. I think it was Joe who mentioned, well, if we talked about something, if we got Mike, what would we have to talk about once we got? Oh, I understand that, but always going to be dictated, right? Right. So moving forward as people of content, so enjoying each other offline, right? Having said that, I appreciate this opportunity to be interviewed by you. Is an honor. Able to catch up with you means a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you're kind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, most definitely.
Right. We even touch the surface, right? Oh, that would be an honor. By the way, that real.
Yes. Same to you,
Josh,
Mr. Lecara, and I appreciate genuinely. I'm honored to have you on. You're again well accomplished, and you've been a big mentor and role model for me since since I was a young kid, since I can remember, since you first came to the house. And remember I think you were publishing one of your first or second books at that point, and I always looked up to you that way. Like, wow, this is something to be reveled in. So I
have to
appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on and spend 4 hours chatting about the existence of life. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's plenty more topics. You're always welcome back on.
I would watch a 90-minute or that format.
Yeah. Because I was like, maybe I think it had to be like 4 or 5 maybe when you came over the first time. I had maybe.
I think if they pursued, I think they would. Oh my goodness! People who complain about the live action, I couldn't Marvel do live action and DC invest. Are you kidding me? People would go gaga for that. And all these years later, that's still as it did then. Yes. Yeah.
No, not at all.
That'd be a big deal for us. So I just wanted to see if Are you ready for something? I still have it.
Yeah,
I do. I'll send it to you afterward. I've had it. I've said, okay, if I said remember,
I came in for that class,
and it's so funny that like, what we did is we took it and we were trying to add.
I was so blown away. Oh my god! I still think about that sometimes. I think it was a video game trailer, right? It was a minute most, right?
Yeah. Oh wow. That's amazing.
Yeah,
it's most funny that I still.
Yeah, that would be.
I just every time I came across it, I think I ended up scanning
DC
it.
did. I think it was more animated, but they did do some movies. I know they did like the Killing Joke with Batman.
One of these days,
they might have done some Superman
stuff. If he remembers.
That was it was very dark, but it was like it was pretty cool like that. I don't know if they've done anything recently. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, my pleasure. Anytime you need anything, you just let me know.
Yeah.
It's been great seeing you and talking with you. And again, I'm so proud of you and the path that you're on. And you already know this.
Yes.
But I'm here anytime you need anything.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You're welcome.
Oh yeah, 100. I would have watched every single one that comes out like that. Yeah. Yeah, it's even better than some of the stuff now they're making, if you look at it. Yeah, so, yeah.
Thank you, Josh. Be safe, okay?
Yeah. I actually remember, too, I think like that week after I tried to draw like an alien Green Lantern type thing or something. Yes. No, you do? Yes. Wow. Yes. Yeah. Wow. Oh my God. That's such a far back like memory. I just kind of remembered that talking about it because I remember that was when Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern came out around the flop, and I was like, I'm gonna draw an alien. No. Yeah. Well, yeah. Wow. Well, thank you, Mr. Lecara, for coming on. It's been an honor, and I think we have many more topics to talk about in the future. If you ever want to come back on, definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Lecara. Thank you. And thank you. And to the viewers, I want to thank you guys for coming on. If you guys are interested in more content like this, you want to see Ray Lecara Jr. come back on the show, please do consider following on the 15 different platforms we're on now, between YouTube and Apple and Spotify. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you again, Mr. Lecara. Will do. You too.
Thank you for listening. Consider absolutely smashing the subscribe button for more content like this.